Hello, my loves. This is the story behind the story. I'm Sierra Melcher, the founder of Red Thread Publishing. As always, we are having conversations with female authors, women who are writing and publishing books, sharing what they're writing about, how they're navigating this sort of mysterious publishing process, really just shining a little bit of light on how they're doing it and how you can do it too. Today, we have a different kind of guest. Beth Ann is a children's book writer. She's our first children's author. And I'm so glad to have you here. Welcome, Beth Ann.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited.
Yeah. So if you've seen our previous podcasts, I don't introduce people very much. I'm certainly not going to read someone's bio because for me, that's like the most mind-numbing thing. I want you to introduce yourself to us and tell us a little bit about your story.
Absolutely. So my name is Beth Ann Oliphant. I have been writing probably almost my whole life since I was 12 years old. It was always a goal of mine to publish something in some way, shape, or form. And, life gets in the way, things happen. You go on different paths, different journeys. I actually did not begin to write my first children's book until my husband was away from military training for 2 years. So my oldest son and I, we would just go to the beach a lot and started writing down things he was doing and seeing and getting into. He's always been a very curious little boy and adventurous. And I turned 40 and I said, I got to do this. It's been on my list for a long time. TikTok, let's write the story and then figure out where to go from there. So the first book started off as a poem. So all of my children's books are rhyming books. And I learned a lot through research and talking to publishers, how to find the rhythm of a book, how to engage children in a book and things like that. Because I knew nothing. I just said I wanted to do something. So I just filled in the pieces. I met a self-publishing company through my Chamber of Commerce, and she kind of became like a mentor for me and really walked me through the process. And I decided to self-publish because for me, I didn't want to write a book to be rich and famous. I wanted to write a book because I wanted to write a book and I thought it would be fun. And my kids would like to see a book on the internet that mommy did, and I would have total control as a self-publisher. I control the artwork. I control how the pages are, where the words are on the page. And that actually very much matches my personality. So I self-published and I found my illustrator through my previous employer. She worked for the same company. So we met totally by chance. She said, I met her friend and her friend said, oh, well, my friend in the ER, she's an artist and she's doing children's books. And I said, well, I need to meet her. And we've been together ever since. So she's done the first 2 books so far, and the third one will be out next year. But they are
so much of this.
And if I'm talking too fast, I just get excited and I feel like I leave out a lot of detail. But
this is it. So let's even have that be the thing. When you're doing something that's lighting you up, where you're learning, where you're growing, you get excited and you can't help yourself.
Yeah.
That's not every part of the writing and publishing process. We know that there are the it's struggle, it's frustrating, it's confusing, I need help, I'm stuck now. That's part of it too. But I want to focus on the excitement of it. And one of the things at Red Thread we're all about is the collaboration, that nobody does this all by themselves, right? You mentioned finding an illustrator, connecting with, and so I wanted also to talk about this idea of a company that makes you a self-published author, because even in my own mind, I think I still even have an antiquated idea of what a self-published author is. It's like somebody who doesn't have any support is a self-published author, rather than somebody who has 100% of the rights to their book and all the decision-making that you get. You've got a company of experts to support you in your publishing process. But so there's still some like new definitions that I think we're learning, and not everybody, especially if they're not deep in the industry, they won't know the distinction between somebody who's going with a company and calling themselves a self-published author versus, because our authors aren't, I don't call them self-published, but they have all the rights to their books, right? So there's this wiggle room in between of what that is. I don't know that one of us is right or wrong. The industry is changing so much. The publishing industry is changing so much, and I love this. This is the time for women to be getting into it, because it's no longer you need a traditional publisher and you need to have an agent and you need to do it this way.
Right.
So I love that you had this passion, you cut out a way that's going to make it work. Show us one of your books.
I'm sorry.
Can you show us one of your books? I see them behind you.
Yes. So this is the new book. It is called Brighton's Beach Adventures Ghost Crab Hunt. I unintentionally turned the first book into a series because I had more ideas. So the first book is Dolphin Surprise, and it is a story of my oldest son seeing dolphins for the first time at the shore. So it's based on a true experience, but you add a little bit of magic for the children's book. The second book, he brings his sister along with him on a ghost crab hunt on the beach at night. And this book has been pretty popular because a lot of people didn't know much about ghost crabs. So it was a fun book to launch this year, and it did get a lot of attention, which is exciting.
That is so cool. So a couple things. For anyone who's thinking of being an author, if you can turn a book into a series, you're golden, right? Because from the marketing perspective and from the like hooking a reader and getting someone to be like, oh, when's the next Brighton Beach book coming out? Then it's, when whether they're children's books or any other kind of book, if it can be like in iterations, it helps you as the author like expand on the story. And because the third one's part of the series, right?
Yes.
So cool.
Yeah, I have 3 children. So I didn't want anybody to grow up in therapy saying, Mommy left me out of a book. So the third child, my youngest, he's in the 3rd book. So the first book, Brighton gets his adventure. He sees the dolphins. The second book, he takes Amelia on an adventure to see the ghost crabs. The 3rd book, they bring Judah to experience his own adventure. So that way they each get their day in the spotlight.
Well, and I admittedly am not an expert in children's books, but you've touched on a couple of things that you've already learned that helped you, how do you make the rhythm of a book, but also you're teaching, each book teaches something, right? Teaching about the ghost crabs. What part of the world are you in? Are you on the
I'm in Delaware.
Yeah, okay. And so I know that region, and like every family in that region is going to want to read your book. Anyone who visits that region is going to want to read your book, right? And do the thing. And so the books teach us about life and teach us about things. And when you have a series with like a growing family, all the families that have siblings, it's like, oh, look, and now we should go on our own adventures. And that bridge between fiction and real life is so cool. So I love that. Are you, and maybe this is too early to ask, but do you have more books in mind after the 3rd one?
I do.
Become a thing? Yeah.
I do. I feel like I try to explain it to friends. I don't write every day, and you don't hear that from a lot of writers. Usually the advice is write every day, write something every day. I get this feeling like almost in my gut that something's there and I got to sit down and write. And that's when I sit and write, and it just pours out of me. And for years, I didn't have that feeling until I started to do these things with my son, and I started to write about them. And they've been consistent, I guess, because the inspiration is constantly there, seeing my kids interact and do fun things. But that's when I write. I just get this feeling that I got to get something down on paper, and I just sit and I just write and write and write and write. So yeah, there's more in me. I don't know what it's going to be, but I know that there's more to come. Definitely.
I love that. And,
yeah.
And you bring up something that's really important. I teach a writer's course for women, because this advice of like write every day is really hard for women with jobs and with families and young kids. It's like, well, when the hell is that going to happen? And if I can't do it that way, then maybe I'm not a writer. But it's just one approach to writing, and that it doesn't have to be the make or break. And so I really appreciate, I teach this sort of cyclical journey of writing, like the resting and the looking for inspiration and the being ready for it when it comes, instead of being like, well, it's 9:15, I have 18 minutes to be inspired, on your mark, get set, go, right? Like that's not how inspiration works, but it's also not how our lives as mothers and entrepreneurs and all the things that we're trying to do, it doesn't work like that. It's sort of, again, like traditional publishing, old school, that's how it was. It's like, you're a writer, you sit down and write, and you make all your money from writing because some big traditional publishing house is going to give you a $50,000 signing bonus. But what if it doesn't work like that? It doesn't have to work like that anymore. So I love that you bring that up. And I want to transition to then, what advice do you have for women who are like where you were? What do they need to hear to get them from always sort of wanting to have written something to making the leap?
Do it for the right reasons, for one. I make no money doing this. What I get when my books are purchased, they go into an account to fund the next book. So I just roll it over to the next book. So make sure you're going into it for your get rich, do it because you love it. You're passionate about it. You've always wanted to do it. There's no time like the present. I wish somebody told me that 15 years ago. Because time like ticks away at you so fast, and before you know it, you're looking back saying, oh, I should have, why didn't I?
Right. How many books could I have written in the last 15 years?
Exactly.
I started when I first wanted to. Yeah.
Exactly. And there is the time, when I wrote the first book, I was a working mom. I had a husband I still have a husband in the military, but at that time he was gone a lot. Yeah. So I was like a pseudo single mom running a house, working
single mom.
Yeah. So I would write at night. Yeah. When my kids went to bed, I would sit down, and if it came to me, I would write it down. And that's when I took the time to do it. Or if I was driving around in my car and had an idea, I'd pull over and write it down. Because you never know when something's going to pop into your head. All of our phones record now. Just start talking into your phone. So do it. Just do it. I have friends that have talked to me about wanting to write, and they have all these ideas. Just write it. Just write it down and keep writing until there's nothing left, and then let somebody read it and take the criticism and advice.
Yeah. I love that, because when I was in my 20s, when I first sat down and started writing, and that book is still on my hard drive because I didn't have the support, the community, didn't follow through. And there's so many untold stories, and there's so many women that have, like you said, like everyone I know has a story they want to tell, a book that they want to write.
Yeah.
And either, it's either an emotional block or a logistical block, or, emotion hiding in logistics of, I don't have enough time, I don't know how to do it. So, I'll wait until, and it's the things that I'm witnessing in the world is like, the tech is changing, communities are changing. You absolutely don't have to do it alone. There's so many writers communities. There's our publishing company that and there's so many other companies that are helping women write and publish their stories, that you don't have to do it the old school way, and it doesn't have to be done all by yourself, right?
Right.
There's facilitators who are helping these stories be born because we're hungry for new voices.
Yeah.
Just are. So I love that advice and really appreciate that. Thanks. Yeah. And it's true. You're not gonna, book profits are not where you get rich. It can be fulfilling in other ways. If through series, there's possibles for the money's actually going to add up. Things are going to happen. There's other ways to make money from books. And I talk with other authors about this, but it's not write a book. The day my first book came out, I was like, how come Oprah didn't call? I was really sure that all I had to do was publish this book and then my whole life would change. Damn, I still have to do the dishes. What is this? And so again, you're do it for the right reasons and with the right expectations in mind, so that you aren't oh, I hit bestseller, but I'm still disappointed. And having people around who have been there to sort of help support the process, but also temper the expectations to make it a little bit more grounded of this is what you can expect.
When I had the goal to publish, basically the company I worked with, they help people self-publish. So they were like a mentor. Yep. They walked me through the process and showed me how to do this stuff on Amazon and KDP. So my original goal was, let's publish this. This is great. I'll get it in my hands. Some family will buy it. Maybe I'll do a vendor fair here and there and sign some books. Yeah. But then it went live and I thought, how do I get in stores? So then I started to ask questions. The worst case they're going to do is say no, right? So I visited the mom and pops, not the big box chains, because that's a little more complicated. Yeah. But the mom and pops are like, yeah, we support local authors. We'll put you on the shelf. So I took my son to the beach in Delaware last Monday, and we went into one of the bookstores. And I said, look, there's our books. And he was like, oh, wow, because his face is there, and he was all excited. He took his picture with it. And it's stuff like that. That feels like that's a huge accomplishment. It's not, you're right. It's not about the money on the back end. It's about, look what we did. And I say we because my kids are a huge part of it. My husband and my family have been super supportive. Look what we accomplished. We just thought we'd be on Amazon, buried in 1 billion children's books online, but we're on shelves, and it's just so exciting. And it's been a really awesome process. I'm on a podcast. I never thought I'd do anything like that either. I think, what?
And this is the thing, publishing shifts our own identity of who we are and what we're capable of, right? Yeah. And as women, we're doing that for ourselves. Your kids are watching that, right? Yeah. Your kids are growing up being I can write a book. Yep. Who's to say that they are not going to become authors before they're 15, right? Yeah. Yeah. And they don't have to wait till they're 40 if it's something that lights them up. My daughter's 6 and she's making books because mommy makes books, right? And so she just makes books look, I made a book today. I was like, oh my God, me too. That's so cool. Look at you, right? And it's changing the expectations of everybody and shifting the nature of storytelling. And it's so much more powerful than the $1.69 that you're gonna get from a book. But I'm super pro small businesses. So I want them to make 35% of the profit because
absolutely.
What's the work without these small bookstores, right? Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to live in a world of small bookstores.
Yeah.
So, it goes around and comes around. I love all of that. Beth Ann, thank you so much for writing your books, for learning what you needed to do to get them out into the world, for joining us today, and for sharing a little bit of your story and inspiring other authors to do the same. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share my story.
My pleasure.